Welcome back, everyone. It's another Friday night with Fantasy Fling. Man, this is getting kind of serious. This is more than fling. Riding solo tonight, but you know what? I have hazy double IPAs in my fridge, so I'm not alone. And drink with me, so that I'm not drinking alone. It's week 5, so we're talking week 5. It's week 6, actually. How'd it go for you? Week 5, the chalk smash in week 5. That was the story. Week 5, we saw it across various lineups, all the way, of course, from cash into single entry, 3 max, and GPPs. And we'll get into that as we get into the hot plays and some of the lineup reviews I'm going to run through for you. Why do we do this? We do it because history repeats itself. We have to look at trends to be successful in DFS. So we're going to take a look at some of the smaller and mid-sized tournaments on this podcast. And on Making a Milli, we specifically look at large field GPPs. So let's get to it. Hot plays of week 5. Number 1, Justin Herbert, 45 points. That game against Cleveland, it definitely it should have been talked about a lot more. I remember there's quite a bit of groupthink going on during the week, and I don't know why people weren't on that game more, at least on the Los Angeles Chargers side. You should always want a team stack Herbert with Williams or Allen or Eckler as a receiving back. So that's definitely, Jared Cook as well, something that people should always be on. Number 2, Brady, 40 points. You should always be, just like Herbert, wanting to play Brady, even more so. So Brady's been incredible, and he just shown no signs of slowing. 40 points. Winston, 3rd place, 27 points. And then just behind him, David Mills. How did he get on this list? And that same Herbert game, Los Angeles and Cleveland, we got Baker coming in at number 5 with 26. To the running backs, Derrick Henry was the top guy on the main slate. We had Austin Eckler just behind him. In fact, they pretty much had identical scores, 0.10 difference, and Eckler was quite a bit cheaper, about $1,400 cheaper. Then we had Myles Gaskin and Alexander Madison. Alexander Madison had me tilting Sunday morning. Basically, I was working, and maybe I got to get rid of this because I bartend Sunday mornings, and it's becoming a detriment to setting my DFS lineups. I think I have all the news. I get up early before I go to bartend, before I'm making Bloody Marys and mimosas, and I think I'm good. And then the news comes down to that Cook's out, and Alexander Madison's playing. And suddenly Alexander Madison becomes a chalk. 30 points. So couldn't get him into enough lineups quick enough as I'm mixing cocktails. I'm like hand building lineups, trying to get Alexander Madison crammed into a bunch of tournament lineups. And long story short, he smashed. If you didn't have Alexander Madison in tournaments at 5,500, good luck. Moving on to wide receivers, Devontae Adams. He was the top dog. He always is. Again, he was chalk. Specifically in cash, let's take a look here at his ownership. Yeah, he was 36% on cash, so definitely chalk. And we saw it across all lineups. He was in big tournaments like the Pylon. He was in the triple option. I believe he was in the Millie Maker as well. Secondly, Mike Williams. I don't understand why people don't play him more. I'm pretty sure he was not that owned in the tournament that he was in the winning lineup. But yeah, he came in with 39 points. Antonio Brown, I had some exposure to him. He crushed it with Brady. A lot of people thought, the Bucs were just going to have their way with the Dolphins, and that's exactly what they did. 34 points. And Kadarius Toney, this dude was a punt, more or less, 4,000, just because the Giants really had no one. They had Galladay, but by the end of the game, so Sterling Shepard was out before the game, and so was Darius Slayton, and then they had Galladay, and Galladay got hurt, and then Kadarius Toney was just a beast, and he feasted 32 points. He had like 8x on his salary. He just crushed it. And last, we got Mike Evans. Again, if you did a Brady double stack, this took down the Millie Maker, actually. Brady, Antonio Brown, and Mike Evans. So 2 wide receivers. That's something we hadn't seen in the Millie Maker. Second time he'd made it this year. But this stack, you got 2 bucks in the top 5. Crushed it. As far as tight ends, kind of funny. Not a lot of guys you'd expect, as it is every week with tight ends. David Njoku at 30 points. Oh, Kyle Pitts, by the way, he finally had his breakout game. Guess what? He wasn't on the main slate. So Kyle Pitts, 29 points in London, the 9 a.m. game, not on the main slate. But the guy who did play well, again, Dawson Knox, he also was not on the main slate. He played in that Sunday night game. But I mentioned him because he looks like this year's tight end breakout. He is just incredible right now. I believe he's second among all tight ends. Just crushing it. We got Hunter Henry at third, 19 points. Dalton Schultz, 13 points. Again, Schultz is a key part of Dallas's offense. He's not scoring a ton of points, but he's been consistent recently. And then Donald Parham, fifth with 12.9 points. So he can do pretty well at any time just because of the nature of the Chargers offense. So as far as my hot plays, I don't got no Paul here, no Eric here this week. So we're just going to go through my hot plays. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the tournament lineups that I had that did pretty well. And we're going to kind of look at some of the trends there. Cash, it was a very high scoring week. 183 points is what I had in my cash lineups. So I had Trey Lance. He was pretty much one of the chalk quarterbacks at 17%. And I was able to squeeze in Henry. He got me 34 points. Fournette got me 21 points. Both Henry and Fournette are the chalk because I play chalk in cash. So 51%, 31%. Devontae Adams was the guy to play this week. Had to have him in my lineup. He got 40 points. Absolutely smashed. And he was 36% owned. DJ Moore, I did have in my lineup. He didn't do very well, but it didn't matter with everyone else. He got me 8 points. Tony, when you get a 4K guy who scores 32 points, you're going to win. So that's what happened there. Having Tony, Ricky Seals-Jones, you got 9 points, 2,500. Williams, Damian Williams, and of course he's going to be out this week. So, or no, he's going to be actually starting for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, different Williams, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So, this is Chicago's Williams. Yes, he is out this week. Khalil Herbert is taking over for him. He got 16 points. So, not bad, almost 3x. And then Washington football team. So, that was my cash lineup. I want to get into some of these other tournaments I was looking at first. The triple option. Now, the reason I'm breaking this down is because I want to break down a tournament that people can actually win. Okay. This tournament only had 1,800 entries, and it's a 3 max. So you can only have 3 entries into this tournament. It keeps out a lot of the MME guys. And look, there's 1,800 people. It's not that difficult to win it. You know how I know? I placed 56th. And really, it's just one player oftentimes that it comes down to where it becomes a price point, right? So you go this player at this price and you no longer can afford the player in the flex spot that you want. So you pay up and then you find a value. And because of that, maybe you miss out on, a real good value in the running back that you probably should have played. So just looking at this lineup. So the winner, Chris B. Preem, 230 points in this contest. Now, most of our lineups were almost identical. He had Joe Burrow and Devontae Adams and Chase Stack. So did I. Had the same exact players. We both had Madison. We both had Ricky Seals-Jones. Where we differed, we both had Devontae Adams, of course. Where we differed was at running back, but literally I had Eckler and he had Henry, and Eckler was 0.10 points less, so 10th of a point less. But he was $1,400 less, and he was also 30% less owned. So from this point of the lineup, I'm actually way better off to win this competition than he is. However, the fatal mistake I made in my lineup construction and where he smashed me is I chose to pay up for Terry McLaurin in that New Orleans Washington game. As a one-off, I thought McLaurin was in for some good production and maybe a big game, and he did not do that. He had 8 points. He chose to get Kadarius Toney, which allowed him to get James Robinson. So Kadarius Toney smashed with 32 points, and so did James Robinson with 24 points. My Terry McLaurin play ended up being Tim Patrick to finish that combo, who did all right. He's 4,700. He got me 16 points, but $2,000 more and far less points between those two. So it ended up being the difference between cashing and winning $12 on a $3 entry, or winning first place and winning $500. Biggest thing about this lineup to take a look at, obviously that stack did quite well, had 91 points. The roster percentage overall was 187%, which is a lot. It is a lot. But when you consider that cash lineups are 220% this week, it's really not that much. Overall pricing, Chalk smashed. He had some chalky Henry and Adams plays, Madison, and they smashed. 50%, $50,000 salary, produced 4.61. So crushed it overall with this lineup. And again, you saw it across every, whether it be cash, whether it be single entry, 3 max, large field GPPs. It was a chalky week. So going on to the Pylon, kind of the same story here. So this is a much bigger competition. There's 19,000 people to win it. What you will always see as the competition gets bigger, total roster percentage goes down and overall points goes up. You can just write it in pen because that's pretty much always going to happen. So, for example, that tournament, 230 points won the 1,800 entry tournament. This tournament, 19,000 people, 246 points. The Millie Maker, 200,000 people, 260 points won that tournament. And each time, the roster percentage went down as the tournament got bigger. There is an inverse correlation with that. So, looking at this one, kind of the same idea. Now, there was some interesting stacks in this tournament. So you had a quarterback and wide receiver. He actually stacked Herbert with Keenan Allen, of all people. What you would think that if there's a winning lineup, it's going to be Herbert or Eckler or Herbert and Williams, but it's actually Allen. The stack got 59 points. So just an observation is, you don't have to be perfect with every stack. He didn't even have the right stack in this game, but because he had Herbert, he still was able to take down this tournament. The other thing, he stacked tight end and defense and opposing wide receiver, that's definitely unorthodox with Dalton Schultz, Dallas's D, and Kadarius Toney. But when you have a 4K guy who scores 32 points, it doesn't really matter what your stack looks like. It's more about picking the right players, and Kadarius Toney, he definitely picked the right one there. Again, I was talking about roster percentage, 157. Down from 185 to the last tournament we saw, which had 1,800 people. This one has 19,000, so it's down 30%. Pricing, you see that too. In the bigger tournaments, the pricing gets more efficient. So this tournament is 5x. The last tournament, 1,800 people, is 4.6x. The Millie Maker, 5.2x. So from a fantasy points per dollar perspective, that's something you obviously have to take in mind. Another thing to mention is the ceiling. It doesn't take the same amount of ceiling to take down a mid-sized tournament, or a smaller tournament is even going to be less than that than you would need for the Millie Maker or the play action, for example. So this lineup, again, 246, not enough to win the Millie, way more than enough to win a small tournament, and just right for midfield size tournament. I think that's gonna do it for the week 5 hot plays. I got one walk of shame. My Dynasty League, I started Dalvin Cook. This is the second time I've done this. So that's a walk of shame for me. I gotta be honest. I play so much damn DFS because let's face it, DFS is life. That when inactive news comes down, all I'm thinking is, how can I get leverage on the field with this news? Literally, I'm sitting there making Bloody Marys, and it comes across my phone that Dalvin Cook is out, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, all right, first thought was, okay, so let's say Cook is the chalk and he doesn't smash. I've got a lot of lineups with Cousins, Jefferson, and Swift as stacks. I'm like, right away, I get a lot of leverage on the field if Madison ends up being the chalk and he ends up being a dud. So I didn't get too carried away, but I did make some tournament lineups with Madison crammed in there. And of course, those ended up being the best ones that I had. So it was, I cashed, didn't win money in tournaments, but it would have been a huge day had he not smashed. And that's how it goes. The chalk smashes, you lose. If you're playing DFS tournaments the right way, generally. Let's get to it. Week 6. We're going to take a look at the top games on the slate. There are a couple really good ones that are intriguing. Kansas City and Washington at 54.5. The Chargers and Baltimore at 51.5. We got Dallas and New England at 50.5. And Arizona and Cleveland at 49. So the easiest way for me to start designing a cash lineup is to first go over to DFS Army and I look at the chalkboard and I see what the sharp players are playing. It's easy. In cash, you're going to play the chalk. If you literally, most weeks, I just look at the chalkboard. Now, granted, I have a lot of knowledge throughout the week just by observing everything and paying attention to the news, but I'm going to look at the chalkboard and I'm looking for value and I'm looking for high ownership projection plays. So that's how I piece together my lineup. You guys got to sign up for DFS Army. 10% off a subscription if you use, you need a prescription. I'm your doctor telling you sign up for this shit. 10% off a subscription if you use code FANTASYFLING. This is what I use to set my cash lineups, and then I go over the domination station. I look at fantasy points per dollar, roster percentage, your optimal plays, and then I just start putting in stacks, and I go from there. But looking over here right now, the value that's really popping off at quarterback that I'm looking for week 6 for cash games is going to be Taylor Heinicke. He's 5,800. He's coming in about 10% projection. Mahomes could smash, and so could Lamar Jackson. I might have some exposure to them, but it's probably going to be more so in tournaments. And the good thing is if you have a little bit of a safety net because Washington versus Kansas City, this is the game that a lot of people are looking to stack. So if Mahomes has a big day at 8,300, you're probably going to be okay with Heinicke. Chances are, because it's the same game environment. So at 5,800, you could pay down for Heinicke, and then you could pay up at a lot of different spots. And this week I'm looking to do it at wide receiver because there's some pricier wide receivers that I'm looking at. So I like that. Darrell Henderson, I'm probably playing Heinicke, but a running back, Darrell Henderson is the guy that I'm looking at. He's a top projected ownership for the Rams at almost 21% right now. He's 6K. Now, news came out today that Chubb is out. So this is, for me, this is a smash game for Kareem Hunt. And if you go to the Dom station, he's coming in top guy at fantasy points per dollar, 3.59 projection. His ceiling projection is like 36 points. He's 6,200. So projected for 22 points. He's definitely a guy that I'm locking in. I'm also really, for me, I'm probably playing 3 running backs: Kareem Hunt, Khalil Herbert, and Darrell Henderson. So Williams, as I mentioned earlier, he's going to be out with Williams is out with COVID, so Khalil Herbert slides right in there at 4,600. Is coming in at one of the top fantasy points per dollar guys as well. So that's probably going to be the three that I will play in cash games. I do like me some Eckler in tournaments, just because that game could really go off. I like Eckler. Another guy, Cook, is coming in at pretty low ownership. He's healthy. He practiced in full. He's due for a big game. 10% ownership right now. We'll see what it ends up being. He's 7,700. You can pay up for him this week. There's a lot of opportunity. So I really like that play. Also in that Washington game, I'm going to have exposure in tournament lineups to both Gibson and McKissick, especially McKissick. I expect Washington to be trailing, to be chasing the Chiefs, and they're probably going to target him a lot in the passing game. Wide receiver, the good thing is if you pay down for Heineke at 5,800, you pay for Henderson at 6,000. And then, of course, Williams and Herbert, there's a lot of money for Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin. So Devontae Adams is always a smash. Tyreek Hill, we'll see what his ownership is at. He's quite pricey. I think there is a path this week to playing both Hill and Devontae, but I'm probably more likely to play Kelsey and Devontae. And, maybe mix in a McLaurin there so you get a lot of angles in that game. Tony, I might go back to the well on Tony, but Kadarius Toney, but we got to see. As a one-off, I would be open to it. It kind of depends. Especially if Sterling Shepard is back. I'm not expecting Kadarius Toney to get the Jalen Ramsey treatment, so we should be good on that. And then tight end. The thing is, I think if you don't pay up for Kelsey, you could do Ricky Seals-Jones. I'm pretty sure you can cram both Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams into your lineup if you want to. So there's a lot of options here this week in cash games. As far as tournaments and GPPs, the games that I'm really looking to stack are Kansas City, Washington. Kansas City has a bad defense. So Washington can actually push the pace a little bit here, and this could be a shootout. So you got to look at stacking this several ways. It's obviously very expensive if you're trying to do a Mahomes to Tyreek Hill stack, but maybe you do a Mahomes double stack with Kelsey and Hardman, get a little different that way. Or you do, as opposed to bringing it back with McLaurin, maybe you do Mahomes, Kelsey, and bring it back with McKissick or Gibson, and vice versa. You can, do, if it makes it more affordable, you can do a Heineke. Maybe you do a Heineke stack with like McKissick, and, you bring it back with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill or, Hardman, so on and so forth. So that game, very much want to stack. Also, the Chargers in Baltimore. I don't know about the Lamar Jackson just because I just don't know that he needs to get there being stacked with someone. And the Chargers definitely have a little bit of a better defense, I think. So, they're not going to get beat as bad by Marquise Brown like some other teams have, like Kansas City, for example. But I'm probably going to, I'm looking to stack Herbert. Now, this week, as opposed to Williams, we're kind of dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. So I'm probably looking more so to Keenan Allen. When you got a guy like Keenan Allen who is, commanding a very big target share, he's still playing 87% of the snaps and getting 26% of the targets. So he's right there. He's split with Williams, but I feel like he's due for some positive regression, especially if Williams is dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. This could be Keenan Allen's week to feast. So while I'm not playing Keenan Allen probably in cash this week, I certainly will have some consideration, but he's definitely, I'm going to be all over him in tournaments and stacks. Herbert, Allen, bring it back with Brown, Maybe bring it back with Andrews. So that's a game I'm looking to stack. Dallas in New England. Dallas has been toting the rock, so it's kind of hard to, have a ton of exposure to their passing attack, but it's something you want to have at least some exposure to. That maybe the game plan goes just for Dak. Belichick is selling out to stop the run, selling out to stop Zeke and Pollard. Maybe they go through the air a little more. Cooper, Lamb, Dalton Schultz, maybe some Cedric Wilson mixed in there. So that's another consideration. The Arizona-Cleveland game is one of the more high projected games on the slate. I'm a little worried about Kyler Murray's shoulder. That said, looking at the chalkboard, let me go over to the top station right now. I do not think he is projected at high ownership. Now, let's say shoulder's fine. Let's say everyone's overreacting, which he's coming at 4% ownership, what I'm looking at. This is a high projected game. If he's coming in at 4% ownership, this is someone you want to play. You have a stud MVP candidate at low ownership. Yes, give me. I don't know if you're doing Hopkins so much with that stack, but maybe get Rondo Moore, maybe get Christian Kirk a little bit in that. Let's see, we got Hopkins 21%, Rondo Moore 15% target share, Christian Kirk at 14%, AJ Green is 16%. So all those guys are in play. And they got Ertz this week, but he's not in consideration. So maybe a sleeper for like a milli or play action. Travis, he got 14% snap percentage last week when Max Williams went down. Zach Ertz can't play this week. This could be a milli maker dart that I like. And yeah, you got to have some exposure to Hunt. You got to bring it back with him, with Chubb out. Certainly David Njoku. So these are definitely some of the stacks that I would be looking at this week for GPPs. Let's look at some ceiling projections and see if anyone is really popping. Fantasy point per dollar. There are a lot of different backs this week that I want some exposure to just because of their price range and how different you can get in your lineups, paying up for different studs because of some of the value with these guys. Khalil Herbert, we talked about, is 4,600. Christian McCaffrey's been rolled out this week again. He's 5,900. So Darrell Williams with Kansas City. Maybe Kansas City decides their defense sucks. And to be honest, Mahomes isn't playing super good. Maybe they decide that they want to run the ball more, so they lean on Darrell Williams. That's something that is realistic and could happen. So like having some exposure to him. Joe Mixon, 6,400. No Perrine this week. He got COVID. He got the Rona. I don't know if he got a shot or not, but I don't think he's playing. So Mecole Hardman, another guy. We're talking about stacks. 2.71 fantasy points per dollar. His ceiling is 23 points. He's only $4,200. So, we're looking at almost 6x there. Cooper Kupp back this week. Not a lot of people are talking about him. It's kind of recency bias. He wasn't on the main slate last week. So that's someone who could be huge in that game, especially if they curb stomp the Giants, which the Giants are pretty banged up. They got no Barkley. They got probably no Galladay. Hopefully they'll have Daniel Jones. You just never know. It could get ugly. So like those guys. And then, of course, Terry McLaurin, I mentioned him. He's kind of popping a little bit. Tight end. One guy I have not mentioned. I mentioned Ricky Seals-Jones. Very good price, $3,000. That's a high-scoring game. I like him. Andrews, smashed last week. That's a high-scoring game. Exposure to him. Waller's kind of getting forgot about because he's pricey. His price dropped a bit. The Broncos have always struggled to cover tight ends. Darren Waller has been a problem. The Raiders lost their coach. Nobody's talking about really the Raiders enough, but because they just think they're going to get stomped. But a lot of times teams are emboldened after they just lost their coach. So Waller is a sneaky GPP play at 8%. He's like a perfect one-off. You don't have to do it in stacks, but you could maybe stack him with Sutton. It's definitely a way to get a little different from the rest of the field. And then let's finish it off with defenses. The Lions fantasy points per dollar. They're 2,100. Like them, I'm pretty much locking them into cash. As far as defenses, you have to get to win GPPs. It's been shown you have to get a little different. You have to pay up. So the Colts, 3,500 going against the Texans. You have to be willing to make that kind of pay up for a GPP. It's a possibility that I could do the Colts at 3,500. Don't like the other options. I mean, the Vikings 2,900, not horrible. The Panthers, potentially, they got a good defense. Maybe Cousins will cough the ball. We'll see, 2,900. But yeah, probably if I'm going to pay up option, I'm looking at the Colts versus the Texans. That should do it for week 6 Fantasy Fling podcast. I appreciate y'all for joining me as I wrote solo this week, but we will still have the Millie Maker. I'll be riding solo for that tomorrow morning as well. We'll break that down for you, break down week 5, and then of course roll the dice on week 6. I'll make it a Millie as we get ready. Next week, I have a lot of exciting new changes to the podcast to tell you about. Super excited. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, we are on iTunes, we're on Spotify, and we are on YouTube. So subscribe, like, all the things. And then fantasyfootballfling.com. I do weekly write-ups on the Millie Maker, other GPPs like the play action, smaller contests like the Pylon and triple option. So check that out and subscribe so you never also miss a deal. We have lots of deals to offer you, like with Owner's Box. Every single week they're sending me free entry into contests, overlays. It's Superflex meets DFS. The best thing is no defenses. Most people play DFS, Superflex. You know how it goes. So with that, they do a $25 match with your first deposit. You have to get in on this. I'm talking rake-free contests, overlays, no sharks. Not only that, but they've been offering that free entry into a $50,000 contest, and it never fails. So it's that overlay. If you're playing contests, you might as well have the odds stock stacked in your favor. Owner's Box. Use the link in the podcast description for that $25 match. All right, that's going to do it. Good luck, everyone. We'll see you all week 6.